Have you ever said to a child, if you're good, you can have dessert, but if you're not good, you cannot have dessert? That statement kind of poses to the child a decision that has to be made. It poses two different realities. Good behavior gets dessert, bad behavior gets no dessert. There's an alternative there. There's a decision that has to be made, two contrasting and opposite things that happens. With adults, we could say something like this: if you're good and obey the law, you will not be in trouble. However, but if you do disobey the law and break the law, you might go to jail. There's an alternative there. There's a positive and there's a negative. There's a positive action that could come from certain behavior, and there's a negative action that could come from certain behaviors. There's an opposite going on there. And in this session, I want to talk about what's called an alternative. And alternatives happen quite frequently through Scripture, where it contrasts two different positions or two different positive or a negative statement. So we're going to look at what a negative is and what we could possibly glean from this and how it can inform our Bible reading. So what is an alternative? Let's look at what it is. First of all, we identify an alternative by the symbol A. The key words that we're going to look for when identifying an alternative is but, while, or on the other hand. The definition of an alternative is each proposition expresses an opposite possibility arising from a situation. Now, a good example of this is Matthew 24, verses 11 through 13. In this passage, we looked at it in our last session about progressions. But Jesus uses this specific passage to talk about false teachers and non-believers' actions, and he uses them and contrasts them against those who are believers and who will really be saved in the end. So let's look at this passage and kind of break down and see where the alternative is and how Jesus uses it in Scripture. So if we want to break down this passage, it says in Matthew 24, verse 11 through 13, it says this: "And many false teachers will arise and lead many astray. And because lawlessness will be increased, the love of many will grow cold. But the one who endures to the end will be saved." So we want to justify all this and look for certain key words. So it starts out with an and. So we know that there's possibly a series coming. And many false teachers will arise and lead others astray. So we're going to split that. And then we see another and because lawlessness will be increased, the love of many will grow cold. Now, here's where we find one of our key alternative words here. But. So we split it there and make that a whole new proposition. But the one who endures, when? When does he endure? Until the end. That's a statement about time, so we're going to make that a separate proposition. Will be saved. So we go to the top, and many false teachers will arise and lead many astray. Now, you might think that these first two propositions would be connected by a series. And up until this point, that makes perfect sense. But we'll get to this in probably a few more sessions. But this is actually an action and a result. The action is many false teachers are arising. And the result of their rising is that people are being led astray. It isn't a continuation of the thought. It's an action and a result. But we'll talk about how to identify those in context later. So there's an action and a result. And because lawlessness will be increased, the love of many will grow cold. Again, we see another action and a result, and we'll talk about this in a future session. But just know that that's what it is. The lawlessness is increasing. That's the action. The result is the love of many growing cold. So you have two actions and results, one after another. So you skip down to the but statement. But the one who endures to the end will be saved. So we look at the relationship between but the one who endures to the end. That's a relationship of time. So that's another thing we're going to be talking about in a future session. That's called temporal, which means it happens in time. The one who endures is doing it in time until the end, will be saved. So, but the one who endures to the end will be saved. The action is enduring to the end, and the result is being saved. So there's another action and a result. So we have our first two layers. If we go back up to the false teachers and because lawlessness will be increased statement, we can connect those by a series. If we look at and because lawlessness will be increased, there's a key identifying and there. It's continuing the thought from the first set of propositions. So there's a series going on, a continuation of the thought. So here's the alternative. The negative is the false teachers arising and leading people astray. The negative is lawlessness being increased, and the love of many will grow cold. So what's the alternative to that? Well, the alternative is the one who is enduring to the end and being saved. So here's an alternative. He's contrasting between the false teachers and the non-believers' actions versus the actions of those who are being saved. So there's an alternative. There's negative and there's a positive. So in the end, we can look at an alternative as just a juxtaposition, a contrast between a positive and a negative. That's really all it is. When we see words like but or while or something, you can do this or you can do that, it's an alternative statement. And it causes us to reflect, I have this choice or I have this choice. We use it a lot with children. We use it a lot with teenagers. We use it a lot with ourselves. But in reality, we really use it a lot with kids. And Jesus uses it here with his followers. Here's a set of beliefs and actions from non-believers and false teachers, or we can be those who endure to the end, and those are the people who will be saved. So that's an alternative. It's a juxtaposition against two different choices, two different realities that are often opposite. And I hope this was helpful to you, and we'll see you in the next session.